Welcome to Life, Laughter, Divorce, episode 90. I am your host, Leanne Linsky.
And I'm the boyfriend.
Welcome back to another wonderful week of
Divorce.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, I feel like the divorce court music or something should show up.
Well, you're the editor. Why don't you make it happen? Hey, while you're out there tuning in, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. And why not check out the website at lifelaughterdivorce.com. We have a wonderful shop for some retail therapy if you're in the need, which you probably are. And hey, holidays are coming up. Why not gift it to someone who needs it?
They're lovely. You're the people, the special people in your life will appreciate them.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Someday we're going to hear a story of someone asked for a divorce by handing them a soap.
Estrangement, anyone?
Annulment, maybe. So we have wonderful handcrafted and divorce-themed soaps just for you. And we also have a life coaching. And click on the life coaching link and get your free session with yours truly. All right. So, boyfriend.
So,
you have
Leanne.
a question for me. You're like, I don't have a
question for you. Not today.
No?
No.
Well, I have a question for you today.
Ooh.
Yes,
okay.
I do. I am wondering, I know we've talked about some of your relationships, and I think you said at one point someone was stalking you.
I've had a stalker.
Would you say that person was like just in the stalker classification, or was the person like a narcissist?
How many women narcissists are out there?
I guess there are more probably than we think.
Probably, but I don't think I wouldn't put this individual in the narcissist category. She was just obsessed with this.
Well, who wouldn't be,
Of
boyfriend?
course.
Everybody's obsessed with you. Everybody who meets you loves you.
No, she was. We were having some hard times, and I think I was. We were discussing ending it, and she stalked me up to a laundromat once.
Yeah.
It's just kind of weird.
Yeah, but stalking is a little bit like stalking. She wasn't peeping in your window. She was just showing up at all your familiar places.
The laundromat.
Well, all right.
So that was a little weird. I've had.
I mean, I've done stupid things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was like when I was in high school. That wasn't recent. That was like, I think about what I do in high school. I'm like, dumb.
But I don't. Yeah, I've had some interesting ladies in my life that my friends would deem the C word, not the crazy, the crazy word.
Yeah.
Yes. So I wouldn't necessarily use it. I think I probably have used it, but looking back on it, I wouldn't use it. But how about you? Have you dated crazy or have you dated narcissist?
Crazy, maybe. I don't know. Not so much. Narcissist, yes. I didn't, and the funny thing is I wasn't even familiar with really anything about, like, I feel like a lot of people talk about narcissists today. And
it's an overused word, I think. Yeah,
I think it's thrown around a lot, and I don't know. But I had never really had any education on narcissist or anything like that. And I had no real encounter to speak of until I dated a particular person. And that was a lifetime of education rolled up into a short period of time. And yeah, it was ugly.
So you didn't know it when you were dating initially?
No. A friend of mine actually brought it to my attention.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were in the middle of it and you didn't recognize it.
Yeah, and I was a mess. I was just a wreck because I thought.
Oh, so it wasn't good. I
was in the middle of it, and I kept thinking like I was doing everything wrong, and like am I going crazy? Like, am I doing why is it no matter what I say, what I do, I feel like I'm just screwing everything up, and like it's a mind game. I can't even explain it because like if you looking back, I can see it. But when I was in it and going through it, I'm like, my thing was like, how can someone be so crazy about you 1 minute and then so cold all of a sudden? And it's like two different people.
So if once you were educated, someone told you about this behavior and you started to realize it, How did you? Yeah, obviously, you're not in that relationship anymore because you're with me.
Right. Yay.
So,
thank God.
yay. How did you get out of it?
Well, that was really a tough situation. I had to leave in a way that, and the thing is once a friend brought it to my attention that this is what I was dealing with, I was like, oh my God, everything suddenly clicked. Like it was, holy crap, this is really what it is. Because at first I was like, are you getting out here? She's like, go look at this website. I was like, okay. So I did. And I sat and I must have read for hours. I was like, oh my God, he was doing all of these things.
So you educated yourself.
I educated myself very quickly.
Then how did you get out of that relationship? Because I've heard those could be challenging to get out of.
Well, that's just it. I called my friend back and I was like, well, what do I do? And she was like, well, you need to leave, like just cut it off and be done with it. And I was like, yeah, but then I started second guessing myself. Like now I'm like, maybe I'm just being dramatic. Maybe I'm like overthinking this. And so I consulted with another very, very close friend. And then I was like, I really want to be sure. So I called two professionals, like a counselor and another woman. And they both said within a 5-minute conversation, they each had asked me like a list of questions. I answered and I was super factual. I was like, well, and he hasn't done this or this or this, but he's done these things. And they were like, how soon can you leave? How soon can you cut this off? Like, does he have any of your stuff, whatever? And you have to leave, but you can't tell him you're leaving. You have to ghost the person. So, and have no contact, because if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, and you tell them that you're breaking up with them, they're losing. They have to win. It has to be on their terms. It has to be their decision. And so I was like, what? And I go, I can't do it that long. They go, well, now that you know, like the thing about narcissists is they can read you. They can look at you and know what you're thinking. They are experts on people observing people's behavior. So for me to be around that person for any more length of time, he was going to see that I was different because I would be behaving differently. I would be planning and plotting my leave. I wouldn't be the same as I was before my friend enlightened me.
So did you ghost him? What did you do to get out?
I did. I had to completely ghost him, and he did try contacting me, and I just had to ignore it. Like, once you leave a narcissist, like you can't have any contact. Like they say, professionals that say, you just gotta get out and be done with it. Because the minute you open that door, even a crack, they will shove their foot in and they will come back. And they will come back twice as hard. They will come back on and, oh, we're going to make it work. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then they will just cut you off and leave you hanging to dry. Like it's very emotionally abusive.
So you were not married to this individual.
No.
This was not one of your two marriages.
No, this was not one of my two marriages, to be clear. But it was a totally different relationship.
But imagine if you were married. How much would that be?
Right.
Yeah, that would be even more difficult because then you're tied to that person in so many other ways than just a relationship.
Right. So, and that type of situation, I mean, I wasn't married to somebody, and I found myself consulting professionals. Like, what do I do? Am I imagining this? So I can't imagine being married to someone like that. What a nightmare it would be, and exhausting. So fortunately, there are professionals out there that can help. And we happen to have one of these wonderful people on our podcast today. So you are in luck. I'm super excited about this because I didn't even know this existed, but there are attorneys who specialize in narcissism. So I would like to introduce you to Leanne Townsend. Oh, by the way, we have the same name. So you know she's terrific, and we spell it the same way. Leanne Townsend is an attorney practicing family law in Toronto with her own firm, Townsend Law. She has particular expertise in domestic violence from her many years as the lead domestic violence prosecutor in the Toronto West Crown Attorney's Office. Victim advocacy and woman empowerment are particular focuses in her work. In addition to being a lawyer, Leanne's passion is her coaching practice. As a family lawyer and through her own experience with divorce, she recognized a need for strong support program to help those going through a divorce and separation. Using a holistic perspective, she offers coaching programs for divorce preparation, divorce management, and divorce recovery. In addition, she has a specialized coaching program for divorcing a narcissist. Leanne is regularly interviewed and asked to comment on events in the media and has been featured in Lawyers Daily, The Village Post, and she has been a guest expert on a number of radio stations on topics including abusive relationships and divorce recovery. In addition, she has spoken at a variety of events focused on women empowerment and has also written an ebook on abusive relationships. Leanne has degrees in political science, education, and law. Her biggest pride and joy are her 2 teenage children who she lives with in Toronto, Canada. In addition to her business, Leanne is passionate about fitness, travel, and lifelong education. So, without further ado, I'd like you to meet Leanne Townsend. Leanne, welcome to Life Lafter Divorce Podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. I guess the best way, as always, is to start out at the beginning. So how are you with that?
Sounds good to me.
So I know you've been married and divorced once, correct?
That's correct.
And you are an attorney and also coach. So I'm kind of wondering, were you an attorney when you were married the first time?
I was, yes. I met my ex-husband just as I was completing my education, and I was an attorney through the whole marriage, but I'm practicing in a different area of law than I practice now.
So did that marriage influence what you're doing now?
I think it did because not so much like now I'm practicing family law, doing divorce law. At the time I was doing criminal law as a prosecutor. So I wouldn't say that my marriage influenced me necessarily to go into family law, but a lot of the stuff that went on in my own marriage has influenced who I am today. And I think the coaching work that I'm doing, I think in particular was influenced by my marriage and my desire to help other people who go through some of the same types of things that I did, being in an abusive marriage and whatnot. So it has influenced some of the direction of what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So I know you've worked a lot with women who are divorcing a narcissist, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And that just getting out of a narcissist relationship in particular is really hard. And so I don't even know where you want to begin in this conversation because I have so many questions about, what that process is like, and especially if you have personal experience of your own that you can bring into it. I mean, it gives you a whole different insight than somebody who has never gone through it.
For sure. I mean, I think like so many things, if you go through it personally, you're able to relate to it. So I think you can help people on a whole different level. Not to say that others, who haven't been through something can't help, but I just think because you personally relate to so much of what goes on, you're able to be more impactful in what you're doing. And it's interesting with the whole, the term narcissism and narcissist personality disorder and all of that, because years ago, that term wasn't really thrown around or used. It wasn't widely recognized as a type of abuse. And, certainly through a lot of my own relationship, I had no idea that was what was going on because it wasn't something that you ever heard about. It seems like it's been more in the last few years where there's been more of a recognition of this type of abuse and the effects of it. And, from what I've seen, this may very well be the most common type of abuse that goes on in relationships that's out there.
Yeah. And I'm almost wondering, is it that common, or is the term overused? Or is it
I think I think that's a great question. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No.
Because I do think the term is overused. I do think that it's common to some point. I think the years where this wasn't even recognized, that there something was missing, because it is, fairly common. But unfortunately, I do think the term is overused. I think that, everyone you talk to thinks that they're a narcissist, and that's not the case. There's some very specific qualities that someone has, and it's not a matter of just being selfish or self-centered, which are the two things people kind of really associate with it. It goes much beyond that. So to answer your question, it definitely it's overused.
Yeah. What would be the key things that you would ask to really know that that's what you're dealing with versus somebody who's just kind of caught up in themselves?
Well, narcissists are often very charming at first. So when, if you meet someone and and not to say everyone who's charming is a narcissist, but but they tend to kind of sweep you off your feet, and you feel really, really special. And they tend to move very quickly, to a more serious level in the relationship. Things move very fast, and you start to notice that it does tend to be all about them. You're kind of an accessory to them and their life, and it's about their needs. Your needs don't matter. And usually at some point in the relationship, well, not usually, always, eventually the narcissist, kind of loses interest in you, or you've done something that you're not now off the pedestal that the narcissist has put you on. And it's at that point where kind of the more cruel behavior kicks in, where they barely give you the time of day. They're dismissive to you. They treat you like you are not an equal to them. They need to feel that they're superior, that you're inferior, that they, are more powerful and knowing and successful, and you're none of those things, or you only are what you are because of them. And they start sending, that type of message to you. And that, so it's a form of emotional abuse, again, where everything's about promoting them and putting them on the pedestal, and you being inferior and beneath them.
Yeah. Okay. So just to recap, make sure. So they sweep you off your feet. There's a lot. And I know I've heard the term love bombing, where they kind of just come at you at all angles to do that. Right. So
Yes.
It's like really fast. And then something happens, and then you're no longer on that pedestal, and then that's when the cruel side shows up.
Yes. And, they do things like, I don't know if you've ever heard the term gaslighting, or if you're familiar with that. It's a common practice that people who are abusers use, where, as the victim of it, you think your gut is telling you, this isn't right. This is what happened. This is wrong. And the abuser says, no, it wasn't like that at all. It was you who, caused this yourself. You brought this on. You deserved it. And they kind of play a psychological game with you, where you start to question your own, recollection, your own intuition, your own feelings, because you experienced something completely different than what the narcissist is telling you happened. And because you've been kind of groomed for the abuse through being in the relationship, you start to believe what they're telling you and start doubting your own version of reality.
Mm-hmm. So when people come to you, how long have they been enduring this? Do people usually, how soon do they pick up on it? And then how soon do they typically in a relationship? Because I know I've experienced some of this, and I've talked to some other guests who've actually experienced it from being on the inside of that relationship. But as an attorney, what have you seen? Where are they at in this journey?
Well, usually by the time they get to me as a lawyer, they've been definitely experiencing the abusive side of it, and they usually are, feeling very stuck and oppressed, like that they're looking to leave the relationship, or maybe they have just left, and they're looking to get a divorce, which is why they come to see me as an attorney, and they're scared, and they often feel like they're just overwhelmed and don't know what to do. With my coaching practice, sometimes I'll get them coming to me while they're actually still in the relationship, and they recognize that they're in a relationship with a narcissist, but they just feel powerless to leave, and they don't know what to do. And so I help them work through that and get unstuck. But generally, the clients who come to me seem to have some recognition of the fact that they have been or are in a relationship with a narcissist, versus necessarily me having to educate them that that's what's going on.
Okay. Yeah. And that's what I was wondering, like, are they pretty up on the fact, like, oh my gosh, this is what happened? Yeah. So
I think to some degree, I mean, just because it's so, I guess, it's much more widely talked about now. As you say, like myself, I was in that relationship, but I'd never heard of that. And so for years, I knew I was in an unhealthy relationship and that there was some level of emotional abuse, but I didn't really fully understand, what it was. And so, but when I finally heard about narcissist abuse, I was like, wow, like that's exactly what I've been through. I can't believe that's just hitting the nail on the head. So as I say, I think nowadays, because it's more widely talked about, there's more information about it. So people are reading it and, it's striking a chord within them that, wow, this is what's happening. But I think even for people who don't necessarily know it's narcissist abuse, I mean, if someone's, telling you, very negative things about yourself all the time and putting you down, you tend to know that that's not healthy behavior or a healthy relationship, and that you're in some sort of emotionally or psychologically abusive relationship, even if you don't know necessarily that it's, narcissistic abuse.
Right. Well, when people come to you and they're ready to get this divorce and get out of the relationship, how do you guide them through this? Because this isn't typical divorce anymore, right?
Right. It's going to be a high conflict divorce, generally speaking, if you're divorcing a narcissist, because they need to feel that they've won, at all costs. They need to feel like they've won. They enjoy the conflict. They enjoy trying to get the upper hand. They enjoy, playing psychological and financial games. And so if you're on the other side of that, it can be very, very challenging to get through the divorce process, and stay sound mentally and stay sound financially, and not get sucked into the games that the narcissist wants to play. And so it can, because a lot of people, I have had people come to me where they've already, they had a lawyer already, and they've already been going through the process, and they've run up a huge legal bill fighting tooth and nail with the narcissist and his or her lawyer, and they're exhausted, and they're looking for another solution. And I mean, it's tricky because you can't advise them just to give in to the narcissist, but on the other hand, you have to pick your battles, because the narcissist will want to have everything be a battle, and that's not going to help you. You need to pick which ones are most important. And there's things you can do as well to, before you actually get into the divorce process, if you're just thinking about a divorce, there's things you can do in advance to prepare yourself to help protect yourself when the process begins.
Yeah. Okay. So what would some of those things be?
Well, one of them would be, I think, in the planning stage, to make sure that you have some money on hand. So find a way to, put some money aside, because, you will need it, you'll need it, if not for legal fees, you'll need it to live on and for your post-divorce life. So that's always a good thing. Make sure you have your own credit rating and a good credit score, because anyone getting a divorce is going to need that. Another thing that's really important is just to get your financial paperwork, all together, because if once a narcissist knows that you're going to divorce, he or she may start hiding things, and, moving things around and that sort of thing. So if you can get, make photocopies of bank statements and credit card statements and investment statements and tax returns and all those sorts of things beforehand and hide them away somewhere, then you've got all that information before you start, and you're not going to have to try and get it later on from, a narcissist who's upset at you. It's also important to put together, to pre-plan and put together your divorce team, which will usually include a lawyer, but also maybe a coach, a therapist, a financial planner, these sorts of people. And you can interview them, in advance and find people that you connect with and feel comfortable with, and, put them on your team. And you can do all this before you've even initiated the divorce process. But, so those are all things you can do that help protect you, especially financially, before, you're in the thick of it.
So people get their team together, their paperwork together and everything. And then when they have that, they come to you. And then in what ways do you approach this differently as an attorney? Because, like you said, they're prepared to fight. They're like, it's almost kind of a losing battle, because it's like, no matter what you agree with, it seems like they're going to question or battle you on.
Yeah, I mean, and for just to go back for a moment as well, they should come and see me even before they've got like part of my process as a lawyer or as a coach is to tell them to get all the things they need to get together. So it's good for them to even, come before they've, they're actually officially divorcing. But then once they've made that decision and we're going to start going through the process, one of the things I tell people or tell clients is that it's really important that the communication that they're having with the narcissist, with their soon-to-be ex, is that they keep it very, direct, very fact-based, very dispassionate, very minimal communication. Try not to get emotional in, what they're saying. If the narcissist sends a nasty message or, phones and says something nasty and aggressive, don't respond in kind, because it's only going to elevate things, because the narcissist wants, loves a fight and wants you to fight fire with fire. And so you don't want to do that. You want to try and keep feelings and emotions out of your reactions. So, if you get a message or an email, don't respond right away. Like pause, take some time so that you're not, just responding in an emotional state and creating a battle that maybe doesn't need to be there. I tell people sometimes that it's better if they communicate only in writing rather than, in person or on the phone, because then you're keeping, a track record of what the dialogue has been. And it's easier sometimes to, be more emotion-free in your communications if you're doing it, in an email or in a text versus actually saying it, live or saying it over a phone call. And, sometimes if it's a particularly bad situation where a client is, really intimidated by the narcissist and really afraid to stand up to them, it's better if the communication then is maybe just done through lawyers. Unfortunately, that can be more expensive because obviously, every time a lawyer is involved in it, usually the clock is ticking and they're charging for their time. But, as you say, in certain cases, that may just be the better solution because the person doesn't have to deal with the attacks or the toxicity of, engaging with the narcissist.
Right. What do you think are like the biggest mistakes people have made?
I think, some of the biggest mistakes are like trying to fight fire with fire, trying to, have everything be a battle, because then you're just, as I say, playing into the narcissist's hand. Part of the strategy is you should pick the things that are most important to you and be willing to go to battle on those, but you don't need to go to battle on everything. And, I think another big mistake people make is just not having proper boundaries surrounding the relationship with the narcissist, because you generally, if you've been in a relationship with one, you haven't had boundaries, and the narcissist has run roughshod over your boundaries, and that's how they've been able to, do what they've been able to do. So when you are going through the divorce process, having these boundaries, it's just so important to protect your own mental well-being, your own self-esteem, and the whole process. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is not having that.
A boundary.
Yeah, not having proper boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. So once they come to you and you get this set up and everything, like you also do coaching. And how is your coaching different than being, I mean, obviously there's some legal differences between coaching and attorney, but what do you do when people come to you as a coach?
When people come to me as a coach, obviously I don't give them legal advice then. It's more, the types of things that we're even talking about, because I consider like my responses to some of the questions you've asked me now are more, it's kind of more coachy, because I'm only authorized to give legal advice in the province of Ontario here in Canada anyway. But with coaching, I'm more interested in looking at the client and what do they need? What are their goals through the process, and what can we do to work together to get them to their goals and make sure they've got all the supports they need, mentally, socially, physically, spiritually, all of those things. So it's a very holistic approach.
Okay. And like, yeah, I'm just thinking, because this can be very traumatic. I mean, people, when they, when you come out of a relationship like this, it's kind of like you've been knocked down. Yes. Like, I don't even know what direction that came from, but here I am. And how did I get here? And like, it's a long recovery time for this kind of emotional abuse on people. And the divorce can take a long time. I mean, what has been your experience? How do people get that, reclaim themselves?
It is a process. I mean, it does take, a long time, and it's something you can't put a time frame on, because different people, will need more or less time. It's not something that's just transferable to, to everyone else. So, I've seen people who, take a long time to recover, years and years, and others who, again, depending on how long they were in the relationship, and, what other supports they have in their life, that can affect things too. So there's no hard and fast rule surrounding that. But it is a process. I mean, people have to do the work. They have to, being aware of the situation is one thing. But, actually doing the work to recover your self-esteem, recover your, often there's a loss of identity. All of that is something that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a coach, you coach them to make sure they have the other people in their support team more so than anything, or?
Well, no, I coach them as well on, issues to do with self-love and raising self-esteem and setting boundaries and, making sure that they are taking care of themselves by, eating healthy and exercising and, going out socially with friends and like all of those sorts of things. So I help them, strategize about things that they can do in all of those areas, to, make sure that they're on track and moving forward in a positive way. So I like, where appropriate, I'll refer them off to, other, experts in it. If I think they need a therapist, like I'm definitely not a therapist, so I'd refer them to somebody for that, or if they, wanted a personal trainer or a nutritionist and that sort of thing. But because I've done a lot of the work, I've taken, first of all, coaching certification, but I've also done a lot of the work myself because I went through this myself. So I have a program that sets out, it has modules for things like, self-esteem and boundaries and self-love and things people can do, in those areas to work on themselves.
Right, right. What would you say, like, out of those things? Well, I guess everybody's a little bit different, but do you have like a specific success story of, how someone has gone through your process of, so we can get an idea, like what we kind of know from hearing others what it looks like to be at the beginning of this, but what have you seen the biggest change in somebody?
Well, I guess one of the biggest changes I've seen is I had a client who, she had been in a long-term marriage with someone who was a narcissist, and she got into her 50s and, found out he was having an affair on her. And so she ended up getting a divorce, and her children were now, grown children. They were in university. So she's, had been a stay-at-home mom. She was an empty nester. Now she's getting a divorce. So her whole world was being turned upside down. And one of the things I worked with her on was, she needed to have a purpose again. It's like, first of all, rediscover who she was, what is she passionate about, and, what is her life purpose now that, being a mom is, not as primary because her kids are older. And she really loved art. And so what ended up happening with her is I ended up working with her and getting her to have the courage and confidence to apply for a position at an art gallery here. And and she was very knowledgeable about art, but she hadn't worked in years. And so she had no idea how to do a resume or how to even find a job, in 2018. So I helped her with all of that, and she ended up getting hired, which was, I felt like the work she did was wonderful regardless of the result, because I always say you shouldn't tie how you feel about something to the result. It's more about the process. But then she got a fantastic result there. And, now she's working there, and her confidence is up so much, and her self-esteem is high. And it's just been so inspiring and just so wonderful to watch what's happened with her.
Yeah, what a big difference, especially at that age, because, if you've spent most of your life raising children and staying at home, I think of my mom, that's what she has done. And then to suddenly shift and to have everything flip upside down on you, it's like, I've done this my whole life. I don't know anything else. What do I do? So
yeah, exactly. I think that's the thing of it when you're for stay-at-home moms, who are in an abusive relationship, it can be so hard because they don't have that same network outside of the home that, people who've been working outside the home have. And I think often too, I don't know if you have kids, but often as moms, we tie so much of our identity to being a mom that, over the course of years, it's easy to lose sight of who you even are as a woman. And especially if you've been in a bad marriage, often you don't feel very much like a woman in some ways because you're not even having intimacy if you've been in a really bad relationship. So being able to rediscover that part of yourself and who you are as a woman and even like sexually and feeling sexy and feeling attractive again can be a huge thing for a lot of women that just kind of felt like a mom for 20 years.
Right. Yeah. What a huge transformation. And so you have people, it sounds like, of all ages coming to you and at different places. Some people have been with somebody for a really long time. Other people have maybe been with someone for a much shorter period of time. But what is like the worst effects of being with a narcissist? What is like the worst that you've seen? I can't even imagine. It's got to be. I don't even know if that's a good question.
Well, I think the biggest effect is just on self-esteem. I think people, they start believing the message of the narcissist, and or maybe on some level they felt that way to begin with about themselves, which is why they were vulnerable to the abuse, which reinforced what they already were thinking. But they come out of the relationship and they just feel so unworthy and so lacking in confidence and so unable to assert their own needs in the world because they've been putting everyone else's needs ahead of their own. And so, and just the complete loss of identity with that. So I think that, that's probably just the roughest thing to see is just you see a beautiful soul in front of you who's been through so much and you want them to see what you're seeing, and they're not seeing it. And it's so sad to see someone like that. But then the beauty of coaching is to be able to help them, start to see that same person that you see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's got to be hard to have, and that really tugs at your heartstrings, is to see people hurting and in so much pain. But what a reward to be able to see them come through the other side. And as a person, as a coach and an attorney doing this work, and knowing being, like you said, being in a relationship with a narcissist is exhausting and it depletes you. How is it being an attorney where you're dealing with that, Yeah,
I mean, that's a great question because it's hard. I mean, I have to be very careful with my own boundaries, to be honest, and protecting my own energy, because I do find, unfortunately, most of the clients who come to me as an attorney, they're in a very negative headspace. Their life is negative. They feel negative. All I'm hearing from them is negative, negative, negative. And it sucks energy from me. So I have to be very careful to make sure I'm doing my own self-care. The tools I've, learned through my own journey, such as self-care and self-love and all of those, I have to do that myself to protect my own energy. And I've learned the hard way myself with that, where, because I have a big heart and I want to help people, I have clients calling me on weekends, calling me in the evenings, messaging me. And I went through a period of time where because I felt bad for them and I felt they're in emotional turmoil. They need me to respond right away. But then it was eating up all my own, I'd be home with my kids and I'm dealing with messages from clients, and that wasn't fair to my children. So I started having to put my own boundaries as well on, when I respond, is something an emergency that I need to respond to right away, or can it wait till the next business day? And, often it can wait. And I've, as you say, that's been a part of my own journey, is just learning those boundaries to protect my own self and my own life.
Yeah. Yeah. You would have to. And, and as hard as that would be, because, those people are feeling very desperate and reaching out. And I'm wondering if someone who's been in a relationship with a narcissist and is getting out of that, they seek you out because you understand their story. Does a narcissist seek out a narcissist attorney? That's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And sadly, I think there are probably a lot of narcissists who are attorneys, because a lot of narcissists tend to be in, jobs where they have power and potentially money and success. And so certain occupations, I think, attract more of that type of personality. But I think most narcissists are not aware they're a narcissist. They don't really, because they don't self-reflect at all. So they don't even identify themselves as being a narcissist, which is one of the reasons why they don't generally ever change their ways, because they have no desire to. But they probably are drawn to, other narcissists, especially in something like a legal battle. They're going to want to have, they would perceive a lawyer who maybe isn't a narcissist or doesn't conduct themselves that way as being weak. So, they probably are predisposed to seek out those types of lawyers. Although, I'm sure that's not always the case. And I certainly don't want to suggest that every attorney who's representing someone who's a narcissist is a narcissist, because that definitely is not the case.
Right, right. Yeah, you'll be getting some phone calls.
Yeah. No, I definitely am not saying that.
So what happens like after the divorce and after people get coaching and stuff? Do you ever have repeat clients or people coming back to you weary of what their next step is in relationships?
I do have that a little bit. I haven't had any repeat like family law clients. Like it seems like once I've done one divorce, I haven't had anyone come back yet for a second one. But maybe I need to be practicing family law longer before that happens.
I don't know. I went to my same attorney twice, but it was within the same 10 years. So
yeah. But yeah, I do have some like with the coaching aspect where because coaching I find anyway, at certain points people need more of it in their life, and then they need to go and maybe spread their wings and use some of the stuff that they've learned and maybe not have coaching as often and then come back if something comes up that they want to work on. So I definitely have clients that fall into that type of category where there's some initially I always recommend doing it every week because I think you need the momentum that gives you and the consistency and the accountability, but after a period of time it's not needed to be that frequent.
Right. Well, that's pretty awesome that you offer this because it doesn't seem like many people are or are there, and I'm not aware of it, but it doesn't seem like there are that many people that's kind of a niche. And it's probably very underserved.
I think it is. Like I've definitely been very well received when I tell people what I'm doing, and people, a lot of people have been telling me there is such a need for that, or I wish I had that something like that when I went through my own divorce. That's the type of feedback that I'm getting, and I feel that the skills and experience that I'm bringing to it are somewhat unique just because of my background as a lawyer. Like there's there are a lot of coaches out there. There are some divorce coaches, but I combine it's more unique because I combine the sort of the hard stuff, like the hard skills to do with, what sort of strategy should you use? Do you need a aggressive lawyer? Do you need a mediator? Do you need a warm and fuzzy lawyer? Do you, what are your finances like? What do you need to do there in order to feel financially empowered? But then I also have the soft pieces like what are you doing for self-care and how are you, dealing with self-love and making sure you're incorporating that into your life and, boundaries. And so I'm combining both sides of it, and I haven't seen something out there. Usually one coach or one program is more one aspect, either, the self-love, self-care, boundaries, but not the finances and divorce strategy, or you just got someone who's dealing with divorce strategy and finances, but they don't care about your self-care and self-love.
Yeah. Well, you're in Toronto, right?
That's right. Yes.
So you can practice law in Toronto, but what if we have listeners all over? What if a listener is in, Chicago and they want coaching? Would you still be able to coach them?
Definitely. I have coaching clients from all over the world. And my coaching programs, the way that they work is it's an online program, but it also includes a weekly Skype or Zoom call. So I can connect with someone anywhere through Skype or Zoom. And then the coaching modules are just emailed out for the client to work through. There's exercises, there's information, and then when we do the Skype or Zoom call, if they have questions or particular areas that they want to work on, we can focus in on that.
Okay, great. Well, that is really good to know because, like you say, not many people are combining the two things. So someone might find a good attorney wherever they live in the world. But if they still want that coaching to go with it along those same lines, it's good to know that you're available. And then, if you were to leave our listeners with like one really big, juicy piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good question because there's like so many things I would probably want to say. But I mean, I guess the biggest piece of advice I would say is to not ever make a rash decision when you're going through a divorce, because it can lead to bad results in so many ways. Either you behave in a way that you later regret by, saying or doing something that you wish you hadn't, or you walk away from things because you just want to get it over with. You just want to have peace in your life. So you don't stand up for yourself and fight for certain things. And then, years down the road, you wish you had. So just by never making a rash decision when you're going through the process, you're less liable to have one of those situations happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just maybe to add on to that is just to listen to your gut instinct, because the team that you assemble, it should be people that you feel comfortable with, not intimidated by, or when you hear your lawyer talking and they're talking about approach and you're not comfortable with it, it doesn't resonate well with you. Your gut is telling you something, and maybe that means that another lawyer is better suited, for your situation. And so I just think it's important to listen to your gut.
Yeah. Wise words, right? Don't act out in anger and make those quick decisions, and really listen to your gut. And it's so weird that we don't do that more often.
It is, and especially if you've been in an abusive relationship, I think you don't trust your gut, and, but you need to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so Leanne, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of this with us. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing, that you're really reaching out to an underserved community of people that are in relationships like this. And I appreciate it. I hope our listeners do too. And I'll be posting all of your information in our show notes so people can reach out to you if they have any questions and need to contact you. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome.